Good morning, Theory 4. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit more about chapter 26 in the textbook, which started off discussing modes and new scale patterns such as the whole tone scale, the octatonic scale, the hextatonic scale, various types of pentatonic scales. So we're going to move on now to talk a little bit about the chord structures. The first thing I would say is that up and through the 19th century, the seventh chord was used most frequently as a dominant sonority, specifically, of course, the dominant seventh. However, in composers like Chopin and Schumann, Beethoven, and others, we will oftentimes find that the dominant seventh is extended to the interval of a ninth. So we have a ninth from root to top of the chord. This is actually a fairly common thing in 19th century music, and it resolves much like the dominant seventh. So the dominant seventh here in the key of F resolves to 1, okay? Now in the key of F, again, the dominant ninth resolves much the same way. But it wasn't until the 20th century that composers really started to think beyond the ninth and also begin to experiment with both functional dominant sonorities and also non-functional dominant sonorities. So let me show you a little bit about what we mean by that. We're working still within the realm of tertian harmony, which means harmonies built on thirds. So we have the triad. We add another third, we have the seventh. If we add another third to the stack, we now have the ninth. We could add another third and have an 11th. And if we add yet another third, we have a 15th. 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th. Now if we add the next third, we have a 15th, but that's as far as you can really go because now we've just duplicated the original root. So a lot of composers like this idea of stacking all these thirds together to create what some people call tall chords, or skyscraper chords is a term that I've heard used as well. Here's an example of that. This is an excerpt from a piece by Maurice Ravel, very much a contemporary of Claude Debussy, and oftentimes thought of in the same light, although truthfully they were quite different from each other in their own ways. Ravel's music has kind of a brighter sound to it, and it's more formally organized than Debussy, who favored kind of a more, what would I say, less structural approach. So this is a piece called Rigodon from a work called Les Tombeaux de Couperin, the Tomb of Couperin. Francois Couperin was a French composer of the Baroque era that was very much beloved by later French composers. And so this is sort of an homage to him. Here's what it sounds like, and my admission to you is that I pre-recorded this so that it will sound good when I play it for you and I don't have to worry about all the wrong notes I might otherwise hit. So here it is. Okay, let's just take it apart for a quick moment. We're in C major, And so the piece begins on the 4 chord. It adds the major 7th, so it's a 4 major 7, voiced like this. Now the next chord that we have is built on the 2nd degree of the scale, which would be D. So here's C, D minor would be next. This is a chord that's built on D minor. But it is not only a 7th, it is also a 9th, and even beyond that, it's an 11th. So this would be a 2 minor 11th chord. The next chord is the 5 chord of G. However, the way that Ravel treats this is to go one step further beyond the 11th, and he writes a 13th. So here's the G. This would be the triad. Here's the 7th, the 9th, the 11th, the 13th. The 13th is way up in my right hand. So we have 4 major 7, 2 minor 11th, and 5 13. 2, 1. Then we get into this little bit of a section that just sort of moves around the one sonority a bit. And then we come down here for what seems like indeed a move to G major. So basically we're just going from C to G, but using these very, very tall, large interval chords to do so. Here it is one more time. And off we go. Okay, now 13th chords become rather popular at this time, and 11th, 13th chords begin to be used a lot as the 20th century progresses, especially in jazz. We kind of associate that sound with, cocktail piano music, for example. But here is the key of D major. Here is a full 13th chord, similar to what Ravel wrote. Now, we can voice it differently to thin it out if we want to, or, which sounds even cleaner still. So there's different ways to work with these sonorities, but the bottom line is that we still have a 13th from root to top. Now, another concept to talk about here quickly is the polychord. This is a different thing. A polychord is where you have two completely different harmonic areas sounded at the same time. Probably the most famous example of that was created by Igor Stravinsky in his ballet score, Petrushka. Petrushka is a little puppet who's kind of a bizarre creature in the ballet, and so Stravinsky wanted to give him a chord or a motif that would depict that. So he has one clarinet play an arpeggio in C major, and he has another one play an arpeggio at the same time in F sharp major, And we wind up with we have two completely different sonorities together, C major and F sharp major. This is a polychord. There are different ways that this can happen too. One type of polychord which was experimented with was called the split third chord, which was basically if you took a minor chord like D minor and put a D major chord with it. It creates a strong dissonance. Split third, because we're using the minor third and the major third simultaneously. So we're literally sort of splitting the third of the two chords. So this kind of a sound. I'm going to stop there for right now because I can only put so much on YouTube at a time, and I'll come back in a little bit. We'll go on a bit further. Okay? See you later.